Oakeshott loved people who he found interesting and people who embraced the project of being human. I mean, the person I thought you might have been about to say was Montaigne.
Well, I was about to say he's the next one, right? It takes a long time.
It does.
But Montaigne comes along as the inheritor of really Augustine's mantle of the individual, looking around him and observing the world and making comments and understanding and changing his mind too. This is what I think what Oakeshott loved about Montaigne, is that there's this constant insistence of what he doesn't know, what he's only begun to understand. And then, of course, with the essays being rewritten like several times in his own lifetime, actually changing his own text over time to actually reflect his own changing sensibility and ideas. Now, for an individual like that to come out of the blue in Western culture, I mean, he doesn't say he comes out of the blue. He comes out of a particular kind of tradition, but nonetheless, he takes it to a whole new level.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. And I mean, I think we can see this in Oakeshott's own notebooks. This is one of the things that's really interesting. In the time since you wrote your dissertation, which is very fine, by the way, we've discovered a lot of Oakeshott's writings that were not published. I mean, I said already the one essay that I read for the first time wasn't, but he kept notebooks his entire life. And these were all published in about, I think it was 2014 by Luke O'Sullivan. And they are fascinating. I mean, little epigrams that he writes on his own, insights he gains from other writers, just thoughts he's trying out. You can see little kernels of his later essays in this, but they're worth reading on their own just to see, how he is thinking through these issues. I mean, so in a way, they're a little bit like Montaigne, although he never intended for them to be seen, I don't think. But they're wonderful. So that's an interesting place to start in Oakeshott as well.
That's another feature of him that's sort of so alien to our contemporary sensibilities. Far from seeking attention or fame, far from publishing everything he ever wrote, he didn't publish much of what he wrote. His actual production of materials is quite modest for a man who had such a long career and such a high level of academics. But each one is very carefully considered and very deep. In other words, he's not interested in a reputation. He's not interested in academic honors. He was even at one point offered a knighthood by, I think, Margaret Thatcher at the time, and he deflected it in some way. I think that's the story I've heard, and I'm not sure whether that's entirely true or whether there was something else to do with, or whether in fact, I think I heard another story that maybe they got the wrong Oakeshott and they sent it to the wrong one, and he was just incredibly relieved and pretended that he dodged a bullet. But that would be exactly the thing he would hate to do. So he's this character. He's this individual. And maybe readers can understand a little bit why, when I started reading him, I just felt like this is the friend I never had. This is the man who has thought through the world in ways that finally make sense to me. And part of it was his disdain of success, his disdain of achievement, his absolute commitment to his own thought processes, his own elaboration of ideas, and an obsession with getting it right, regardless of what anybody else would think about it.
It's true. When you think about what contemporary academics usually do, it's now, we're encouraged to have a Twitter account and to be saying things about absolutely everything that goes on. And that is, I don't think Oakeshott would have thought that's the job of somebody in a university. It is actually to, if we can't be completely away from the world, to retreat a little bit and to think and not to feel like you have to have something to say about absolutely everything. And he did think a lot about, I think, public affairs. And I mean, he was a political philosopher. So he was aware of what was going on, but he didn't feel like he had to comment on it all. I mean, when you look at his output, he had one major philosophical book when he was a young man, Experience and Its Modes. And then he has one major sort of crowning achievement at the very end of his life. Well, not the very end, but in 1975 on human conduct. And in the middle, he's writing some essays and he's mostly teaching. I mean, that's the other interesting thing about Oakeshott is that he is committed to the life of a teacher and a learner. And I am told by many people that he was a wonderful teacher. He would lecture, but then he would also have seminars and he would engage in conversation far past the time of the seminar. He'd go out to the bar and he was just extremely socially adept and loved conversation. And that's not a surprise to anybody who reads Oakeshott.